All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how to get started on this very center circle of our coil basket. So the first thing that you're going to need to do is you're going to need to identify the end of your core. All right, so on our cores, we have one end that has kind of a blunt end to it, and we have another that's been cut off at an angle. All right, we're going to be working with the end that has a cut angle on it. Now, next I'm going to get my string and I'm going to make sure that I have my string on a needle. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to very carefully pull that through the loop. All right, now I just want it to have just about a foot and a half tail. All right, you don't want to pull it through so it's halfway through the string. Now to get started, I'm actually going to work with the opposite end of the yarn, the side of the yarn that does not have a needle on it. Now, I'm going to hold my core in my right hand, and I'm going to have my yarn in my left hand. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set my yarn on top of my core like this. So notice my core is pointing to the left while my yarn is pointing to the right. All right? I'm going to put my thumb on my yarn kind of at the end of the taper. So I have that angled cut right here, and I'm going to put my thumb just right underneath where that cut ends. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my thumb in place and wrapping down towards me and then away from me. All right, so I don't want to come towards myself and wrap away. I'm going to wrap away from myself. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly work my way down the rope. Notice I'm not wrapping towards the end, I'm actually going in towards the right. So I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to try to make sure that I don't have any white showing between my rows on my string. And I'm going to keep wrapping this until I have about 1.5 inches, 2 inches of yarn wrapped up. All right, so let's see. Well, this might be okay. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to make a bend right here in the very center of that coil that I just wrapped. So just using my thumb, I'm going to kind of push that, and I'm going to fold it like this. All right? Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to pinch those two pieces of core together using my thumb and my forefinger, and I'm going to wrap around both pieces of core. All right, I'm going to wrap 2 or 3 times up the loop first, just to kind of really make sure that it's being held together. And I'm going to make sure that I'm pulling my yarn pretty tight as I'm doing this. All right, and then up next, I'm going to start wrapping down. And I'm going to start covering up this little tab that's hanging out. So very carefully, I'm going to wrap down. I'm only going to wrap down, again, probably about 1 inch, 1.5 inches, no more than that. So I think this should probably be pretty good. This is what yours should look like. All right, next, we're going to actually start wrapping and creating the spiral. So how I'm going to do that is as close to this base as possible. I'm going to put my thumb and I'm going to turn it. All right, I'm going to try to make it look like a 6. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my needle. All right, so I have my needle over here, and I'm going to bring the needle in through the bottom. All right, so I'm going to bring that needle in, and I'm going to poke it through that center circle. I am not going to bring it in from above. All right, so I'm always going to bring this in from below. Now, depending on how you're holding your core, all right, depending how you're holding this could change which direction you bring your needle in. So my little rule of thumb is this. When I'm wrapping my yarn, all right, when I'm wrapping it around, it's coming around and it's hitting the back side of this. So it's hitting this side. So I'm going to bring my needle in through that side. If you want, you can kind of take a Sharpie and you can make a little dot on one side, so you know for a fact that that's the side that you always have to bring your needle in. It's never going to change. All right? So I'm going to take my yarn, I'm going to make sure that my yarn is staying right here at the end, because what can happen is if I let that yarn hang down from the front and I bring my needle through and I pull it, what can happen is, notice how my yarn is hanging down here. All right, I want to make sure that I move this so it stays right at the end where I'm wrapping my yarn up. I'm going to take that and I'm going to kind of pull it a little tight. And next, I'm going to do a double stitch. So I already brought it through the center loop once, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wrap it around. I'm going to use my finger to kind of hold it in place, and I'm going to pull my needle through one more time. And I'm going to give it a little tug to make sure that it keeps its shape. All right? Then, once I'm done with this, I'm going to pick a number between 7 and 10. All right, so I'm going to choose the number 8. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my yarn and, still wrapping away from me, I'm going to wrap it around. I'm going to wrap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then on my 8th one, I'm going to kind of use my finger to kind of push it down so it's still creating that spiral. And I'm going to make sure that my yarn's wrapping around the back. Make sure it's not hanging down like this, or else your stitch won't work. I'm going to bring it around, and I'm going to go through that center circle again. I'm going to pull it through once, and then I'm going to bring it around. I'm going to make sure my yarn is staying right there at the end, and I'm going to bring my needle through again. I'm going to give it a little tug to make sure it stays in place. And I'm going to do this again, and I'm just going to repeat this process. So I'm going to wrap 8 times. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then once again on number 8, I'm going to kind of wrap it around, and I'm going to bring my needle through that center loop. I'm going to wrap it around one more time. I'm always going to do a double stitch. All right, and then I'm going to wrap 8 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then on 8, I'm going to wrap to the center circle. I'm going to bring it around, and I'm going to bring that needle through the center point a second time for that double stitch. And I'm going to keep repeating this process. There's only going to be one difference. This next one that I do, so let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then on my 8th one, when I'm wrapping this around, once I get to do about 1 full loop around that center circle that we created, I'm not going to go through this center loop anymore. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to simply wrap to the previous row from now on. So instead of wrapping through this center circle, I'm just going to go to the previous row. So I'm going to do 1 stitch, 2 stitch, and then I'm going to wrap 8 times. So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then once again on my 8th one, I'm no longer going to loop through right here. Now I'm going to loop through my previous row. I'm going to do that twice, and I'm going to keep going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then once again on number 8, I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to take my needle, and I'm going to go through my previous row. Always make sure that when you're stitching that you're leading this yarn over the coil first. So if I don't do that, and I just bring my needle and I pull it through the center, when I pull this through, notice my stitch is hanging out right here. This isn't where we want it to be. It's not going to keep this core attached to the spiral anymore. So if this happens, it's an easy fix. All you have to do is just move it to the very, very end of where you're wrapping your yarn, and then just pull that tight. All right, so once you have that, we're just going to continue on again. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Going to hold it down so it's creating a spiral, and I'm going to bring it through the previous row. I'm going to wrap it around, and I'm going to tighten it. Now I'm starting to run out of string, so I'm going to show you how to change your colors here in 1 second. All right, so I'm just going to keep showing you. I'm going to wrap 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to hold it down into a spiral, and I'm going to bring it through the previous row. I'm never going to bring my needle through that center loop. Not again. So I'm going to do that double stitch. And now I'm going to kind of show you how to change your string. Now I'm going to kind of cut this off because I want to switch string. So I'm just going to give a couple inches right here. Now first what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this as many times as I can. So I'm going to go 1, 2, and now I have just a little tiny tab. So even though I only got 2 little wraparounds, this is fine. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to get my new string. I'm going to thread it through my yarn needle. And I'm going to, again, use the opposite end of that string. To change colors, all you have to do is just hold your previous color down against your yarn and kind of line up your new color. So I'm just going to kind of bunch these two together, and I'm even going to kind of twirl them together so they kind of stay together. I'm going to put my thumb on top of the colors so they stay put. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to continue wrapping from where I left off. So I'm going to do, that was 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then on 8, I'm going to hold it down, and I'm just going to continue working like normal. I'm going to go through the previous row. I'm going to do 1 stitch around, and I'm going to do 2 stitches around. And then always making sure that I'm including these little pieces of yarn when I'm wrapping the core. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and once again on 8, I'm going to hold it down, and I'm going to bring that needle through. 1 stitch. Now I'm going to bring it through a second time for my double stitch. All right, and from this point forward, we're just going to do the same process. I'm going to wrap 8 times. I'm going to loop to my previous row, and I'm just going to continue doing that until I work my way all the way around. All right? Now, I'll be posting another video probably tomorrow showing you how to actually raise your coil so it actually starts taking the shape of a bowl.